So give us just like a brief biography, who you are, where you came from, and how you ended up where you are today.
All right. Well, I'm an economics professor, but I've been tenured for a while, so I don't have to focus on economics. The nice thing about tenure is you can do whatever you want. And I'm one of those people who was pretty inclined to study a wide range of topics, so I had to make myself focus a while so that I could get tenure. And I just squeaked by, luckily, but tenure is a great deal. I'm now 61 years old, so I've been around a while, and I've been across a lot of different fields in my life, and I had a lot of different moves. One of the most dramatic moves I made was at the age of 34 with two kids, age 0 and 2. I returned from my career as a research programmer to graduate school to get a PhD in social science at Caltech. And from then I got a postdoc and then the job I have now, which eventually got tenure. So I'm really just interested in a wide range of topics, but I try to hold myself to the standard of if I'm going to go into a new topic, I should stay with it long enough to make a contribution. Make something that's an actual substantial thing that we add to what the world knows. Otherwise, it's just dilettante and, goofing around, and it's not valuable. So I think I can meet that standard on most of the topics I've gone into. I've added something.
You've got 2 degrees in physics and then a social science PhD. That's an interesting combination. You and I share that in common. I have an undergraduate degree in engineering, computer science plus philosophy, and then a law degree. And you did some work for DARPA, for the Future Map program, did some work for Lockheed Martin before you went into the academy. Tell us a little bit about how you went from studying physics, working for DARPA, Lockheed Martin, into what you're doing today.
Well, it's a long history, so there's a lot of things to say that I don't want to take all the time here with, but I guess I'll riff on some key points. When I was a physics undergraduate, I remember sort of standing in the elevator next to some other physics professors. I wasn't talking to them, I was just listening, and they were talking to each other about how if only they would bother, they could go over to those social science buildings across campus and straighten them all out, because obviously that was all bullshit. And obviously those people just didn't know how to think. And so physicists knew how to think. So coming from a hard science or engineering background, STEM sort of thing, those people tend to be taught that social science is bullshit. It's just, it doesn't make sense. There's no content there. It's all just made up fluff.
Yeah.
And they're pretty arrogant about that. And they're wrong. The social scientists are often wrong, but it's not bullshit. It's there's a lot of knowledge there, but it's a harder subject. And in some sense, the main reason it's harder is that people care. Yeah. In physics, people actually, hardly anyone fundamentally cares emotionally about physics in terms of one theory being true or another, but they care a lot about social science. So that means social scientists have to do a lot more resisting all the temptation to believe what you want to believe or what somebody else pushes you to believe. And that's what makes social science hard. But I think a great advantage of coming from physics is the expectation that there will be some simple answers. Simple enough to understand and yet powerful enough to explain a lot of things. Some people who only ever grew up in social science, they just have this sense, well, it's all intractably complicated and you can never really figure anything out except maybe a glimpse from a distance. And it's all sort of all swirled up and mixed up with your own priors and emotions and politics and everything. And so, they don't really expect to get a clear answer and to get strong evidence and to wait for strong evidence. So I think my physics background leads me to expect to wait for clearer answers, to expect to be able to prove things to a wider range of people in a wider range of contexts. And I think that's served me well, because if you look for them, they are there.
I remember when I was studying computer science, I took an economics class, and this was back in the early 90s. And I remember thinking, this is before behavioral economics became a big thing. This was kind of more classical economics about the rational man and the rational actor. And I remember having this intuition, Robin. I couldn't put it in words, but as an engineer and a philosopher, I had this intuition that the entire foundation of classical economics was based on bullshit. Like, there is no rational actor. People don't act rationally. And that always kind of bothered me. And like I said, at the time, Kahneman and cognitive biases and all these things that have become a big deal lately, behavioral economics, were not really that big a thing. So talk to us a little bit about that issue. Like, in other words,
Okay, so
You've done a lot of, yeah, you've done a lot of work on how classical economics kind of tried to make things real clean, and economics turns out to be much more messy than the,
let's talk about
yeah,
physics for a moment.
yeah,
The
yeah,
physical world is obviously enormously complicated.
yeah,
And obviously, almost anything around you, like the elephant standing behind you, according to what I see here,
yeah, that's,
is enormously complicated. And so the way we can only ever reason about anything in the physical world is through simplifications and simplified models, which we know to be false because the world isn't that simple, but quite often simplified models are quite productive and help us think about things. So almost all theoretical reasoning in any fields is a trade-off in practice between, getting it exactly right and getting it simple enough so you can reason about it and do something with it. And that's true in every field, not just economics or physics, but every field whatsoever. And so I think people get too hung up on the simplification and say, but the simplification isn't true, but it's never true.
yeah,
You model a planet as a sphere, that's pretty good. Modeling a person as a sphere, not so good, but we often model people as spheres
yeah, yeah,
when we're doing something quick and dirty. And as you know, in computer science, even, most programs are really complicated, but we still make models of simple parts of programs. And that gives us some insights, even if the programs themselves are far more complicated than these models. And so I would say, in fact, behavioral economics doesn't actually change economics that much. If you believe that, they were all wrong before, but now they've got behavioral, so, they must be fixed at their problems. Well, no, behavioral economics really doesn't change that much. So what you really do need some structure to cut through all the vast possibilities, some simplifying structure. And the rationality assumption is actually not crazy as a simplifying assumption for a lot of things. That is, one of the slight variations on the simple rationality model is people do the rational profit or utility maximizing thing plus noise.
yeah,
So honestly, in almost every field of science, one of the standard things you do with an oversimplified model is add noise. You say, our model predicts this plus noise, and then you can fit it to data and you can, get a chance of how well it fits. You almost never have any model without noise because that never works. That's
yeah,
completely wrong. But models with noise are actually often pretty good, even if they're pretty simple models with noise. So economists' model of rational people plus noise actually does a pretty good job in a wide range of scenarios. Now, but relevant to my book, the key thing is rationality is about achieving particular ends. What are the ends? So the claim in our book, The Elephant in the Brain, which I co-author with a wonderful co-author, Kevin Simler, is that the way economists and other social scientists have often gone wrong is right at the beginning and making the wrong assumptions about what the end is, what the purpose of it is, what are the motives.
yeah,
That's where we go wrong. But once we offer a new assumption about the motives, we're still going to offer a pretty simple model of the motives and assume some sort of basic rationality in achieving those motives, and we're going to understand a lot of things in the world. So we're not rejecting rationality, mostly we're rejecting your assumption about what your ends are, what your goals are.